Hello, everyone. In this week's review, I will try to give a spoiler free review of Avengers Infinity War. And I'm assuming that most of the people who are watching this video have probably seen the movie because everyone seems to be sworn to secrecy about spoilers. And I'm not going to say this is a non spoiler review because there's going to be some stuff I'm going to have to give away in order for context. So here we go. So the bad guy that's been built up for several movies now, Thanos, is now trying to get all these Infinity Stones in order to essentially wipe out half the universe. And yada yada yada, the Avengers have to stop him. And I went through that really quick because it's not like the plot. It's not as complex as the Pirates of the Caribbean plots, where they had several different stories going on at once. But with this movie, it's a lot darker than the other two Avengers films. I mean, even though Ultron got a little shady, it didn't get dark. They still had a happy ending. In this one, it's kind of like The Empire Strikes Back, where the characters are about to win at the last second, but then they end up missing just by that much, and then they end up losing. And I feel like what this movie did really well is that it had this was kind of the in between great Marvel movie from Thor Ragnarok and Spider-Man Homecoming. Somewhere between those two movies was a good dark and dramatic and semi-funny movie that balanced each other out perfectly and was a great mix of a football offense that could run and pass the football effectively. And Thanos is actually a really good villain. I mean, his motivation doesn't make sense. I want to have peace in the universe by wiping half of it out. I mean, even though Ultron's reasoning for wanting to destroy the Earth was full of it too, at least he wanted to destroy the world and start over with his creations. That, as much as that's BS, it made a lot more sense than Thanos' arguments. And I remember watching this in the theater last Friday, a few days ago, and every time Thanos tried to explain his plan, I just, if you didn't try to explain or justify what you were doing and just made yourself a mindless killer that has some charm to him, I would have liked that a lot more. That's kind of what Ultron was, but this guy did not have. He was a very well written character. He just didn't have as much charm or disturbing intrigue as Loki or Ultron. So that's already kind of a big problem. And one thing I'll say is that this movie, it felt a little disjointed, and this is a huge ensemble cast, so I'm not really sure how you could introduce all these characters without having the film feel a little wonky at times. But to be fair, the wonky introductions of all the characters at first when they were setting the story up, they did eventually sort themselves out, and they did eventually, as I said before, mesh together. It just felt a little weird or awkward whenever we got to a new character. Or a new character that was a part of a team that hasn't teamed up before. And most of the characters are actually very well done. Spider Man and Star Lord did get very annoying between their pop cultural references. Star Lord coming off as a bit of an immature dick who always has to be right. And see, the thing about Star Lord is that when he was being serious, when he was being emotional and not being a wise ass, that's when it worked. But whoever wrote Star Lord in this movie made him more of a cartoonish caricature of himself from the other two movies. Because I don't remember him being this. He's ever since his first film in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's gotten progressively more immature, and this one just went full force. So he kind of annoyed me a little bit. And yeah, Spider Man. I mean, he's really just there as the comic relief half the time, and a lot of the references, like the references to aliens and Footloose, got. I mean, I understand people are in love with '80s culture and stuff, but you don't have to force '80s references up the wazoo in a movie about a killer sentient, a killer interstellar being who wants to be a cruel dictator. You can do a little more than that. And the one thing I love about this movie, my biggest complaint that I said last week with Ultron is that, and with the first movie, you kind of had a sense the Avengers were going to win. The first movie, you didn't care how long it took them to win. You were having so much fun with the fight. Ultron, you knew they were going to win. You knew the Avengers were going to win, and that took away some of the suspense. Here, even though some of the suspense is weakened by the future films being announced and planned, you get this sense that the Avengers are somehow going to win. It looks like they're about to win, but then Thanos manages to come up with a big play at the last second and manages to destroy any chance they had at winning. So again, if you're going to watch this review, I was trying to think of a way to do this without as many spoilers, but honestly, I don't know how you could do a review without doing any spoilers. So I'm just gonna have to put spoilers on the video link, and if you wanted to watch this, well, for one thing, if you were so sure you wanted to see this movie and not see any reviews of it, I don't know why you'd watch this video to begin with. But most of the people that I know that would watch this movie have probably already seen it, so I can kind of get away with this. Um, and if not, then, well, you can say hashtag Mike is whatever insult you want to say. Um, but yeah, I do think that this movie, there's really not much to say about it that isn't kind of the same. So, some of the entrances near the end were pretty awesome. That final fight was really epic. And I do kind of like how um, I do kind of like how the movie ends on a dark note. And this film is kind of depressing. There is an Avengers 4, so we all know it's going to have a happy ending somehow. But then again, let's be honest. When was the last time we saw a Marvel superhero movie where the hero lost at the end? I mean, even in Captain America, even though he became a hero and ended up being frozen alive for 70 years, he didn't die. He beat the bad guy, you know? And I mean, I guess you can make that argument with Thor Ragnarok, but that's kind of Avengers Infinity War Part 1 technically because the end of that movie is where this movie begins. But I think this movie is very well done. The visual effects in this movie look the second best of the Avengers quadrilogy. The first one had good effects, some crappy ones from time to time, and I know I shouldn't be comparing this movie to the other two movies, but I don't. This movie kind of made me think of a lot of other movies, including the first two Avengers films. So I don't really know how. Again, I don't know how I can do this review without giving away some spoilers, and I also don't know how to do this review without comparing it to other movies because, well, I kind of figure, for one, it's hard to do. B, if the scriptwriters were going to be annoyingly insistent with referencing 80s movies, I say this evens out. So this is actually my shortest review, and thank you all for watching. And all I can say is, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. And if you have seen the movie, watch it again if you can stomach the sadness.